Hello, my name is Patrick Heinrich. I'm Professor of Japanese Language and Linguistics at Ca' Foscari University in Venice. And today I share some ideas with you about cities, globalization and high linguistic diversity. To start with, we have to understand that linguistics is a discipline that was established at the start of the 20th century, and it served specific purposes. It served the purpose of the nation state. So it is not a neutral science, but biased. We are now in the urban age, and we need to reconsider how to engage in the study of language. One thing that we did in the 20th century is to think that there's a unity between language, territory, and its people. We call this linguistic nationalism. This approach no longer works. It no longer works in particular in cities, because cities have high linguistic diversity. So it's a very good idea to start taking account about the people and the languages that you have in a city, instead of departing from the view that the national language is spoken there, and then add various deviances to this picture. If you consider Venice, for instance, the city where I teach, we have 50,000 inhabitants, residents there, but at times almost 100,000 visitors. That is to say, we have in Venice every day basically every nationality in the world. So if you engage in the study of language in the city, you better start by taking account of all the people that you have in a city, the languages that you have in a city, instead of departing with the idea that Venice is an Italian city in which Italian is spoken and a particular kind of Italian is spoken, namely the Venetian dialect. So this would be a traditional orthodox approach, which I do not encourage you to take. I don't encourage you to take this approach because Venice, for instance, is much older than Italy, and Venice has always been diverse. So diversity is not a new thing in Venice. What then is urbanization? The UN talks about urbanization, or talks about the global age, because more than 50% of the world's population lives in cities today. I don't think that this is a very good approach, because it leads us to mapping people on cities or into countrysides. It leads us to mapping or ennumbering languages that are spoken in specific entities. I prefer to think of urbanization according to the ideas of Henri Lefebvre, who in 1970 wrote an important book called The Urban Revolution, arguing that after the Industrial Revolution there would be an urban revolution. You should remember that linguistics is traditionally the linguistics of the industrial society. We no longer live in this society. We live in an urban society. And urbanism means a spreading out of urban centers into the periphery and a thickening of these relationships. So it's about mobility and connection, and not about how many people live where. Languages are a key factor in this urbanization process. Think of mega cities. We have 47 mega cities worldwide, that is cities with more than 10 million inhabitants. 41 of these cities are located in Asia. So if we're interested in urban communication, we cannot simply study European contexts, but Asian contexts are very, very important. London took 120 years to grow from 1 million to 8 million inhabitants. Seoul has the same growth in 25 years. And any of these big cities has easily more than 100 languages. So engaging in the study of linguistic diversity in the age of globalization means to take the city as a unit of analysis and forgetting about the nation state and everything that comes along with it. So how should one engage in the study of linguistic diversity in globalized cities? One thing one should not do is engaging in what I call the social linguistics of distribution, where you try to map languages or language repertoires on specific areas or on specific people. But you should look at language as a mobile resource that is doing specific things in specific contexts. So we have the social linguistics of mobility and individual agency. Posing questions how to study language in the city is of vital importance. And formulating questions is part of studying language in the city. Social linguistics is a discipline which is speculative, empirical. You always have to start with some idea. You always have to start with speculating about what is happening in the city, and then you go after your idea in an empirical way. So first you need to have an idea, a question, and then you see whether that question holds true or not. So what are possible questions? One good question, or very basic question, is what is a particular language in a particular city good for? What does it do to its speaker? What do speakers do to its language? Does the language make them happy? Does it make them embarrassed? Do they hide the language? Do they adapt it? Might they give up that language? So this is some of the questions, some of the things that we look into when we study language in the city. When you study that, you should not fall into the trap of trying to map these insights, but you should have to study them in contexts. So what does a language make to somebody in a specific situation, and what does it do to whom? These are very important questions when we study language in the city. And you will not know the answers to these questions, to these very basic questions, unless you really engage in going out there and studying this. And once you do that, you will find insights that are way more complicated and complex than you would ever imagine. And this is why language in the city matters for the development of social linguistics.